lastly, let's go to Save Scene As, and let's make sure that we name this stool underscore finished, just so we know that this one is the one that's been finished, UV mapping. Let's hit Save As. And now let's export the UV map set that we have here so we can take that to Photoshop. So let's hit UV snapshot, and let's make sure that this is inside of the correct project folder, UV stool, and we're going to save it to the images. And let's name this UV stool. Done. Make sure it's a JPEG and apply and close. There we go. So now let's go check out Photoshop and let's open up that UV map JPEG we just saved. So I'm going to come to desktop, our course folder. I'm going to make sure that I'm in the UV stool project folder, and let's go to images. UV stool done. Let's open that up. Awesome. So here is our UV set. Now, it's completely up to you how you want to do this. You can either, let me make a new layer here. You can either just do blocky colors. Let's say I want to have a bright pink stool. Oops. Say I want to have a bright pink stool. I could put down shapes, and I could try to just line them up like so. Maybe if I want the top to be a little bit different of a color from the legs, in which I could make the legs blue. We just want to make sure that the UVs are completely covered, because what UVs are not covered will not have a texture to them. So I could do it like that. Maybe I could even bring in the brush and make this blue. Let's see here. Then I could try to cover it the best that I can. Oh, let's use a different brush. Try to paint in as close as I can, as clean as I can. Like so. You would definitely do a better job than I am because I am using a mouse. So we could have blue legs, a pink top. We could do it like that. We could also just, let me undo this, bring in a texture image of some wood. So I'm going to go to open, and I have saved in my source images file some wood texture. Now I can include this file with your scene file you're going to download before you start the project that has the stool inside of it. So if you want, you can use this same image. So let's copy this. Let's paste it here. Now I am going to set the opacity. I'm going to lower it so I can see the UVs behind it. And let's try to clean this up. And let's put a texture on. As you can see, I'm not terribly familiar with Photoshop as I am with Maya, so I'm actually going to cut this, and I'll put this on a new layer. So we have the stool leg here. Maybe if we shrink this down a bit. That could be for the rim, for the stool top. Let me set the opacity down too. You can try to cover up the stool like so. And then just erase the excess. I am working with the mouse, so it is going to be not perfectly clean. That's okay. All the way around. And I applaud you if you are better with Photoshop than I am, and you are doing better than me, and you're just like, what the hell are you doing? Watching me? My apologies. So, shrink down. Whoop, that's not what I wanted. Lower the size of this. And just try to separate this. It's not terribly necessary, but as I like to say, for the sake of cleanliness, do it like that. Oh, and I missed a spot right here, so I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. Make sure all my UV wireframe is covered. All right, so there's the top. There's the rim. We can bring this back here and lower the opacity on this. Like so. I guess it's important to remember that the wood grain needs to follow. Like that. And of course, I could erase in between just for the sake of cleanliness, but I'm not terribly worried about that. Let me bring in a new layer. Lower the opacity on this. Make sure that the grain is following. Like so. Let's try not to overlap. So it's up to you if you want to go through the trouble of using a wood texture like this one, or you can just do what I was doing earlier where I was just using solid colors. And then one last time. For the rivets here. Okay. So that looks like everything's pretty much covered. I'm going to merge this all onto one layer, not with the UV background. Oops, actually, let's bring the opacity back up on all of these things. So, are you going to do it as sloppy as I do it? No, that's not how it works in the industry. You are going to be more careful to make sure that the UVs hug, that the texture hugs the UV itself. In this case, I didn't even erase in between. So, is that problematic? Yes. But I'm okay with that this one time. So, let me make sure everything looks good. Okay. So, I merged all those wooden textures. I'm good with this. Let's export this. Export as a JPEG. You could also export it as a PNG if you want, but it's easier just to do JPEG. Make sure that the quality is high. Export. And let's make sure we're in the correct file right here. UV stool. And we are going to export it to the source images. So UV stool done. Let's save that. So I'm going to drop down Photoshop and let's go back to Maya. We can leave the UV editing workspace. Let's go back to general. And I'm going to select this here. I'm going to open up Hypershade. And let's connect the texture we just created to our stool. Alrighty, so very last step, you made it this far. I am so proud of you that you powered through this tutorial. Very last step is we are going to connect that shader, that texture that we just created to our stool. So let's make sure that the stool is selected. I'm going to come up to Hypershade where we edit. Oops. Let me actually, let's see, reset current workspace because I moved some things around on accident. Let me open up Hypershade again. It's going to be this little blue circle icon. And I'll bring in the window over here. There we go. Okay, so last thing we're going to do, we're going to create a blank shader. I am going to make sure that it is a Maya shader, a Lambert, because Lambert is the most basic that you can get. I'm going to scroll in here. Okay, now just how I explained it in my very first video about using Hypershade to connect the textures that we just created, we are going to go to where it says color in the material properties of this Lambert. And we're going to go to this icon at the end right here. And we are going to select File. So now we have the option to upload a file, a texture file, right into this shader that we just made. So I'm going to click the folder icon and make sure you're inside of your project folder. And there's the texture right there. I'm going to click Open. And now I've assigned the texture to the Lambert shader that we just made. And I'm actually going to rename this to Stool. Okay, so now let's click over to the viewport over in Maya. And let's make sure the entire stool is selected. And back in Hypershade, I am going to hold right mouse button and I'm going to assign material to selection. And there is our texture. And we got ourselves a wooden stool. Now, if it doesn't immediately appear, that's because you don't have textured turned on. So if I actually toggle that off, it is just going to look like there is no texture applied. And that happens sometimes when you do apply a texture, you don't immediately see it. Don't panic. That's because you just need to turn on the textured view right here. And there is our basic stool. All right, so now I'm going to save scene as finished UV. And all you need to do now is you need to zip up this project folder and submit it, and you are done with the Module 3 project.